The American people need champions to remind them what they're capable of.
Jesse, you're the best.
You're the fastest man on the earth.
Who do we have here?
I'm Jesse Owens.
You're a natural. I don't trust naturals. I will say, you can run. Boy, oh boy, you can jump. What I want to know is, can you win? Let's see what we got here.
Problem, Coach?
No.
You want me to do it again?
Yeah.
Jesse Owens sets a new world record.
You want to win a gold medal?
Sure.
You want to do it in Berlin?
Mr. Owens, how can you justify taking part in Germany when there's so much discrimination here at home?
Whoa, 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 whoa. Now, where'd you boys think you're going?
Just using the showers.
Not until we're through, you're not.
Jesse, you have a chance to strike a powerful blow. Under the Hitler regime, we must not go to these Olympic Games to show our solidarity with the oppressed people of Germany.
You get a chance to be a part of history and you're gonna walk away from it?
I got people looking at me for an example.
I don't care about any of that!
Yeah, well, you're right, Larry. You don't have to. People are counting on you. To do what? To get on over there to Berlin and beat those Nazis.
You was put here to run. Don't listen to any of them.
Out there ain't no black and white. There's only fast and slow. Nothing matters. Not color, not money, not even hate.
Running some type of direction, cause the people going nowhere are the ones that are flexing. I'm not trying to be a preacher, I was never a reverend, but I can take your ass to church and show you glimpses of heaven. You better.
For those 10 seconds, you are completely free.
Now he's just showing on.
Yeah, I'm not the sportsman.
You're not the runner in the film.
He was a sportsman, that guy.
Avery Brundage was.
Yeah, he was a big sportsman.
He was previously in various sports organizations. Your work, Jeremy. Welcome.
No, I mean he ran, he jumped. He was as a young man. He was an athlete himself, so he knew about it.
He knew all about that. Well, your work. Congratulations on the film. Your work has ranged from the romantic to the aristocratic to the deliciously decadent. Let's talk about Avery Brundage, who was the head of the U.S. Olympics organizations, who insisted that the U.S. not boycott the 1936 Berlin Olympics, even when others were pressuring Jesse Owens to go. He was a complicated guy, wasn't he?
He was a complicated guy. He was a construction magnate from Chicago. He was used to dealing with complicated things. And he believed that amateur sport, he believed implicitly in amateur sport. And he believed that sport should rise above politics. That, never mind the situation in Germany, give these guys a chance to compete internationally against each other. And pure sport, what sport should do is to bring people together through international competition. And he argued very strongly for that. I believe he was probably right.
The film puts him in an interesting spot because it makes him, it makes him have to defend his viewpoint and say, no, we should go. And I would imagine one challenge was to make him not look like a capitulator, to make him look in some ways like a victim of the time, just like Owens was, between his business and the politics at hand, right?
That's right, because remember, in 1936, there was a lot we didn't know about what was going on in Germany, about their Aryan politics. And the Holocaust hadn't happened. And so it's very important, I think, when you make a period movie to play the perception of that time rather than the perception of today, looking back with what we know. And you see that not that much has changed in many ways, many places, from how the world was in 36.
Yeah. Did you do a lot of research on it? Is that something you do anyway? Do you research deeply into each character that you have?
Well, I research as deeply as I can. I mean, Avery Brundage existed. I could look him up online, find out about him, and find out about what decisions he made during his life. I mean, for instance, at the Munich Olympics in 70, whenever it was, 77, when there was a massacre of the Israeli team in Munich, and he said, the Olympics must go on. A lot of people wanted to cancel them, but he said, no, it must go on. We must not allow terrorism to change our agenda. And he was deeply criticized for that. Once again, I believe he was right. I mean, today, if you walk the streets of Paris, you'll find a lot of people who are saying, they will not change our agenda.
And you see in this film, you see Brundage approach a state of, he was sort of accepting that, look, this is something we have to do, but then by the time they actually get to Berlin and Hitler refuses to shake Owen's hand, you see Brundage sort of stand up and say, either he shakes everyone's hand or he shakes no one's hand, right?
Sure, he was a man of, I think, high principles. And he was a man who liked to get his own way, like many men in his powerful position. I mean, he was a construction engineer from Chicago. He was used to working with the mafia, with the unions, with the city authorities. It's not easy to build a big building in the middle of a city. You have to really push your way through. And so I think he was the right man for the job. And when he was crossed, he didn't like it. In the movie, he's really screwed, and he doesn't like that. But when he came back from the Olympics, even though Jesse Owens had won 4 gold medals, Jesse wasn't recognized here in America really by the president, certainly. And when he went to a sporting club that was celebrating, he was the man of the night, to celebrate his victories when he got back here to New York, he had to enter through the kitchens because he was black. So that's crazy. But it teaches us a lot about history, and I think it's a very important and engaging film.
Now, you've had a specialty, actually, since your first film, French Lieutenant's Woman, of playing characters that have a duality inside them, that have some challenges facing them. They kind of see two sides to every issue, from French Lieutenant's Woman to Betrayal to famously Dead Ringers, in which you play 2 twin gynecologists. It's a fantastic film, David Cronenberg's film. That must be a terrific challenge, is to find that duality within one character and play it each side against the other, right?
Well, I've always loved characters which allow me to embrace the inconsistency of us as human beings. I mean, we are inconsistent the way we behave. We behave one way with some people, another way with other people. We are, the great writers encompass that. I mean, Shakespeare, he knew about that, and why Shakespearean characters are so interesting and so deep and so resonant with us even today. But on film, it's rare to find characters that are gray rather than black or white, good or bad. Characters who contain all those qualities within. And I'm attracted to that because I like playing characters which have real contrast with them, within them, inconsistency within them, enigma within them. It's just more fun, you know. That's why I'm in the business, for fun.
Growing up...
apart from paying the bills.
Before going off to school, growing up as a boy on the Isle of Wight and St. Helens, I think I read a quote that you said you didn't like people telling you what to do. And what I love is that you become an actor, because that sort of feels like that kind of goes against it. Aren't there always people telling you what to do, directors, playwrights, sort of other aspects of acting where people tell you what to do? It kind of goes against the grain of that, right?
Yeah, I mean, one is surrounded by people telling you what to do, and you just have to explain to them that you do it your way. But in order to do that, I mean, there's a great quote somewhere which says, to live outside the law, you must be an honorable man. And that resonates with me. I think, I don't like rules, if that's really what you mean. I don't like rules. I think the less we have, the better. I think we have to take care of each other, and we have to make sure we don't tread on each other. But I don't like rules. I don't like the fact that I can't smoke here, I can't walk there, I can't do this, I can't do that. I mean, life is to live, and we'll make the decision about whether it's going to upset people if we have a cigarette, or whether you won't be able to breathe in the particular motor car if you have a cigarette. I quite understand that sort of thing. But when I'm walking in Central Park on a beautiful sunny day, I know that the rules which said I can't smoke a cigarette is because they think I'll drop it and I'll litter the place. I won't. I'll smoke it. I'll make the decision about what air I breathe, whether it's carbon monoxide from the cars or whether it's nicotine from my cigarette. I'll make that decision, and then I'll take care of it, and I'll put it somewhere where it won't bother anybody. And that's the sort of the attitude I have, and it sometimes gets me into trouble.
Just sometimes. I read one remark about your performance as Klaus von Bülow in Reversal of Fortune, which won you the Academy Award for Best Actor, absolutely, which was that you kind of had a difficult time figuring out the charm of von Bülow, and then you thought, well, how would my father react in this situation? Is that correct?
Yeah, it's very difficult when you're trying to get inside a character who, and of course Klaus von Bülow is still alive and was very much alive when we made the movie, and he looked very different to me. He was a bigger man, and he was balding, and he was Dutch German, and so a very different guy to me. And it was very hard I had to convince myself I was him. It was very hard to find that journey into him, and it was. You're right. After some weeks of watching him on the Barbara Walters show, watching the live television coverage of his trial here in New York, I suddenly thought, how would my father, if my father got into that situation, I'm very like my father, who's now dead, but I'm very like him. If he got in that situation of cameras on him all the time, being taken to trial for murdering his wife, how would he deal with it? And I thought he'd deal with it with sort of charm and elan and maybe that's how I deal with it. And but that route gave me the route into Klaus von Bülow, so I was able to feel I was him.
And it's sort of a dark wit, some of those terrific moments when, people say, we walk up and say, you're a strange man, Klaus. And so you have no idea.
He had wit.
Yeah, right. Let's talk about the accent that had...
when I met him, which was about 4 years after the movie, I think I was at John Paul Getty's house in England. And when I arrived there, Getty said he has a wonderful house with a fantastic, one of the best libraries in Britain. And he said, we were watching the cricket, and he said, Klaus is in the house looking at the library. I will quite understand if you want to leave. And I said, no, it's fine. I'd like to meet him now. I've made the movies a long time ago. And Klaus used to write me little because you do interviews like this, when you're playing a character, and you've become that character, and you sort of do the interview from that character's point of view. And he would read these interviews, and he'd send me little closely written postcards saying, I'm not like that. I don't do that. And so we had communicated, but I'd never met him. So anyway, I was standing there watching the cricket, and I suddenly heard this voice behind me saying, you see, I'm not fat. And I turned around, and I said, I never said you were fat. I said, you were bigger than me. He said, He said, I've been reading the newspapers. Do you ever see Alan Dershowitz these days? Now, Alan Dershowitz was the guy who defended him in this court case, very famous lawyer, pro bono lawyer. And Alan had been around while we were making this movie. And Klaus said, do you ever see him? And I said, no, I haven't seen him since we opened the picture. He said, I understand he's representing Leona Helmsley and Michael Tyson at the moment. And I said, yes, I'd read that. He said, you haven't been asked to play either of them, have you? And I said, no, I felt Michael Tyson was beyond my range, but I thought I'd have a crack at Leona if they asked me.
Edgy characters has been a specialty of yours, though, since Reversal, but even earlier than that, Dead Ringer, as we mentioned, and Reversal of Fortune, but then continuing with Damages and M. Butterfly and Lolita. How crucial is it to have that sense of bravery as an actor, to really dive into any project, regardless of what it is?
I think bravery is very important in any way of life. I think to have the freedom to fail is a tremendous freedom, and one we should embrace, because if we accept that possibility, then we accept the possibility of surprising ourselves and succeeding in something we thought we couldn't do. So I think risk, which has always been something very dear to my heart, being a motorcyclist and a horse rider, and a sailor, all things which contain, and a skier, all things which contain risk, and somebody who's married. Another risk. I think it's important to embrace all these things in life, and also in my work. I try to do it. It's always when you get a bit of a name for yourself as an actor, you're always asked to do what you've done before. You're always asked to, continue in the same direction, the same sort of parts. And that has never been attractive to me. I've always tried to find quirky characters, normally characters that other actors have stayed well clear of. But Old Irons, he says, I'll have a crack at it. And it's paid off once or twice. Not always, but once or twice.
The accent you use as Avery in Race is interesting. It's sort of a Midwestern accent. It's new for you. And I know that the accent that you used in Reversal Fortune, you didn't really catch it until like about midway through filming, right? And then you went back to dub some of those sequences as Klaus von Bülow. How important is the accent for you for a character? Do you start from there and work in? Is it part of the whole process?
It's part of the process. It's part of how you feel, how you talk. And you're right. With Klaus, I didn't find it till about a third of the way through the movie, and then I had to go back and lay it on afterwards when I'd found the voice. But at the moment, I'm just going into rehearsals for O'Neill's Long Day's Journey into Night, which we're going to play in the oldest theatre in Great Britain, in Bristol, at the King's Theatre, the Bristol Old Vic, and where I started as an actor 40 years ago or whenever. And doing America's greatest play, Long Day's Journey into Night, which, if those of you who haven't seen it, there's a production, I think, opening at the Roundabout at about the same time as I'm going to be doing it in England. And to get that accent, and that's a very difficult accent, because the character I'm playing, James Tyrone, he had Irish parents. We're talking now sort of 1890-ish. And he became an actor, and he had to change his Irish brogue, which you could cut with a knife. You had to get rid of that and learn an American accent. But American actors at that time, people like Edwin Booth, they didn't speak, they tried to sound English, really. And also, the American accent, which tends to elide and not go on to the end of the word, doesn't travel very well in the theatre. If you're working in big theatres, you have to hit the consonants, you have to hit the T's. And if you listen to early broadcasters, they really hit their T's in a way that you wouldn't expect an American to sound. So I'm trying to find that accent at the moment as I learn the lines, of which there are many. And it is a very important, when I've got that right, I hope the other things will have followed along.
Yeah, and then of course there's the specific poetry of O'Neill and just those delicious lines.
Sure, because O'Neill, was writing about his family. The man I'm playing is O'Neill's father. And because he was of Irish extraction, his writing has a wonderful sort of rhythm to it, which comes from the Irish, who of course were the greatest talkers of all time and still are.
You mentioned the Old Vic and that you studied there. That was, of course, started by Laurence Olivier in 1946, I believe.
Yeah.
When you co-starred with him in 2 episodes, right, of Brideshead Revisited,
yeah,
the rightfully revered British miniseries from 1981. What was that like for you as a young actor to co-star with Olivier?
Well, it was terrifying. He had always been my hero. I had seen him play James Tyrone in Long Day's Journey into Night when I was in my early 20s, about 10 years before I made Brideshead. And he was the lion he was the leader of the English actors. He had an incredible career. He played everything. And by the time I came to work with him in Brideshead, he was an older man, getting pretty ill, pretty sick, but still I remember we had a scene where he's lying in bed and I'm sitting there beside him, seeing how he's feeling, because he's not well. He's dying, in fact, as Lord Marchmain. And we rehearse, and I watch him, and he's lying there watching me like a lion, thinking, what does this young cat think he's doing? What can I do to wipe him off the screen? And I realized that feeling of competition never goes from a good actor. He always wants to shine. He always wants to be the one. And I was glad to see that even as I get older, that is never going to die, that desire to excel and to be better than the person you're playing with.
Have you found that in yourself as you've gotten older, as you're co-starring with younger actors, that sort of sense of competitiveness is there?
I don't know. Well, I'm always amazed by these younger actors. They're all so good. I remember people sometimes go on about my voice, And I ignore it completely because, I'll tell you why. I was, early on in my career, John Hurt, who's another, who's a great British actor, he was a neighbor of mine in London, and we were having coffee, and I suppose we were in our late 20s, early 30s, and he said, have you noticed how many good young actors there are coming up? And I said, yeah, I have. It's so depressing. He said, do you know what I do? I said, no, John. He said, well, if I see a really good actor, a young actor who's going to really compete with me, I say to him, you have a wonderful voice. Have you ever listened to it? And you know that he's up shit creek without a paddle.
I actually think that there's a musicality to your voice and even your physical performances as well. I know you used to kind of busk and play guitar and sing as a young man for fun and for a little bit of
it wasn't
money.
for fun, it was to pick up girls. It was the only way I knew
even better.
how to pick up girls. You know, you sit on a pavement looking penniless, which I was, singing moderately well, which I did, and girls come to you because they feel sorry for you. They want to take care of you. And I never knew how to chat up girls. I never really have. And so that was the way I met young ladies when I was young.
Do you take inspiration, though, from either music or anything else for your performances? Do you take kind of look around and say, I'll take a little bit of that, or there's a line here from that song, I'm going to try and work in?
I don't know where inspiration comes from, when it comes. I don't know where it comes from. I think it comes from watching people, from listening to people. Music, yes, music's always been a very important part of my life. I mean, I play, rather pathetically, quite a lot of instruments. I play the fiddle, the Irish fiddle, and I play the guitar. I play a little bit of piano, I play the drums, I play the harmonica.
Not all at once, though.
Not all at once, although guitar and harmonica are all at once, yeah. And I love that. I mean, music has always been an essential part of my life. I don't know where inspiration comes from. I really don't. It's one of the things I love doing in life is just sitting and watching. And the sad thing is that in many cities it's difficult to do that without being recognized. But there are some places you can find where you can just sit and look at people. And what I look for is the spirit in them. And just the way they move, the way they hold their heads, the way their eyes are. And that sort of soaks in. And then when you're creating a character, somehow that bleeds out. You find the qualities you want. But I think watching and listening, which we don't do nearly enough to each other because we always have our head in our screens or in our little thing, you know. Driving down here today, I couldn't believe it. I thought, how do these people survive? Why don't they die under buses? Because they're all like this, like this. And but I think looking at people in their eyes, I hope we aren't going to lose the ability to. I mean, I know I'm talking to people who are doing just that. They're apart from you, lovely people. Everyone else who's watching this is watching a screen. Well, I hope you get out and actually find a real face. And realize, because otherwise, how do you really get to know people? You can't do it with you can't Twitter relationships, can you? But we seem to be developing a generation who only do that. But I love to get out, and that's where my inspiration comes from.
I'm going to take some questions from the audience in just one moment, but I just want to ask you, are there any hurdles or anything that you haven't done in your career yet that you really want to do?
I love being surprised. Of course, there's lots I haven't done that I want to do. Some I may now decide not to do. I don't know. The great thing about being an actor or a gypsy, which is really why I wanted to be an actor. I wanted not just to not have to do the rules, but to sort of be able to move around, not be stuck in a structured situation in my life. And what I love is surprises. I mean, many people who are in conventional jobs say to me, how do you live with the fact that you may not work for the next 9 months? And doesn't that worry you? And I say, no, I rather like that. I like the surprise. I like the freedom of being able to say, I'm going to stop now, as I did when I did up an old house in a castle in Ireland. I thought, I'm going to stop acting for 2 years, and I'm going to do that. And I remember talking to someone in the royal family in England, and I said that's what I was going to do. He said, God, you're so lucky. I'm booked up for the next 4 years. I couldn't stop. And I thought that is for actors, that's the plus side of the coin.
Yeah. You need to refill the coffers, as it were. You need to refill those wells.
And there's other things to this life. I mean, life, there's so much to do in life.
Yeah, that's right.
Frightening. And I haven't got much time left.
Yeah. Well, let's take a couple of questions from the audience right now.
We're going to start with a question from an online viewer. So Julia would like to know, what was the biggest challenge to inhabit this character?
Brundage. Well, Brundage was a very different. I mean, he was from Ohio, which I'm not. He was a big man. I've seen photographs of him. And I always feel quite a sort of slim man. I feel like someone who slips through the cracks rather than someone who pushes the wall down. So I had to try and get that. And I suppose that was really physically the biggest challenge. And also I had to. No, that was it. That was it. Yeah. Julia, thank you.
Next one.
Hi. Big fan of Scar. I don't know, long time ago. But if you could be in a remake of any film ever that was ever made, what would it be and what role would you play?
Oh my goodness me. Remake of any film ever made. What would it be? Oh, I don't know. I look at actors who are doing things well. And I think I'm a plumber. I'm not an actor. I can't do what he's doing. So I suppose the films you remember are the great films, and the great films have great performances, and they're the ones that make me feel like a plumber. So I would never think I want to do that. I never look back. I never regret. There have been the odd movies that I would have liked to have done that I haven't. But I think that was just the way it was. I've been lucky. I've got the movies that I have done that I've enjoyed. So I don't look back. I don't regret. And I don't know what's around the next corner, and that I love.
She brought up The Lion King and Scar. I wonder if you get a lot of millennials who kind of walk up to you and when they hear your voice kind of naturally recoil because to them they see Scar.
Did he sound exactly like me? I can't remember. I mean, I was so disappointed with Scar because when you're doing these things, you sit with a bunch of tapes and a lot of artists, the guys who draw you, they're there doing sketches of you as you're recording. They're videoing you as you're recording, and then I see the film. Okay, I go and see the film, and there's James Earl Jones as Mufasa. Rippling with muscle, fantastic hair and mane, just incredible. And then Scar limps on with this sort of weedy hair and this tail that's like this and ribs showing, and I think, please, give us a break. And then I remember seeing the opening night at Radio City Music Hall, and there we were, and then finally there was Scar, who'd done very well. There was Scar hanging from a cliff by his fingernails, and then he was pushed off, and the whole audience stood up and cheered. Bar one. I sat there and I thought, so what was wrong with him? What was wrong with him? I mean, why? I was very hurt.
Well, like all great villains, Scar thought he was doing the right thing, right? Whether it's Richard III or Scar, to them, they're all doing the right thing, right?
Yeah,
they don't think that they're villains.
Absolutely, yeah. A villain feels he's right and everyone else is wrong or stupid.
Let's take the next question.
Hi, thank you for being here. You have a very impressive laundry list of characters that you've played across media. You've done voice work. You've been in front of the camera and on stage. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about your process for each one, if it's different, the same, how you prepare for a role on stage as opposed to behind a camera, if there are any preferences, if you like one more than the other?
The answer is I love contrast, which is probably why I don't live in Los Angeles, because the weather bores me. I mean, I live in England, where one day you can wake up and it's fantastic, and a bit like New York, and the next day it's foul. So in my work, I love contrast. I was in the in the Royal Shakespeare Company doing some Shakespeare, and my agent called and said, do you want to sing My Fair Lady with Kira Takanawa at the Albert Hall and make a record of it? And I thought, yes, because I was somewhere else, I remember being out in the desert filming a Western with Ed Harris. And I thought, God, why? I just love to be on Broadway. Why aren't I on Broadway now? I just want to get out of this desert. So I went to Broadway and did a play. And while I was doing the play, I thought, oh, I so love to be filming. You know, the grass is always greener, isn't it? And I think I've been very lucky. Although I trained as an English actor, and I didn't start really doing movies or television much before about the age of 27. So theatre was my base. But I've been allowed to do cinema and television in Europe, in America, in England. I've been allowed to do musicals, to do radio plays, to do big screen, small screen, song and dance, straight drama, Shakespeare. I mean, it's a huge privilege. And I prepare in the same way for each one. I learn everything I have to learn to be that person that I don't know. So if it's a period person set in history, then I learn, for instance, when I'm in the mission, I studied the Jesuit history in South America, which is fantastic. If you ever get the chance to read a book called Red Gold about that time in the 1700s when they went out, these Jesuits went out from Spain to South America to convert the Indians to Christianity and created the first communist state in the world, in Paraguay, where everybody worked for the community, and it was fantastic until the church came and messed it up. So I'm able to, I have the privilege of when I'm playing a character set in a particular period, of studying that period, getting into it, and then living it, either in the play or in the movie. And so everything I don't know, I learn. And it will therefore depend. If I'm playing a modern day guy who's a bit like me, I don't have to do so much research. If I'm, if it's something different, I mean, I have to do more. So research is always there. And as far as the difference between working and researching but preparing for film work or theatre work, it's really the same. It's just how you broadcast it that's different. In other words, you have to get your head in the same place, your mind in the same place, so that your body moves as that person would move, and that you feel as that person would feel. In the theatre, you have to have the technique to be able to bounce that out to however many people are in the theatre. Whereas on film, you can allow the camera to come to you and you can just feel it and you don't have to project it at all, certainly in a close-up. So it's a matter of scale, and that's just technique, but the actual preparation, the finding of that person, is the same in all media for me.
Next question.
One last question.
Hello, Jeremy.
Hello. I love that hat.
Thank you.
Do you know that hat? So what do you call it? It's not called a pom-pom hat, but it's called a what is it?
A beanie. Yeah.
You call it a beanie. I was doing up this old place in Ireland, right? And in the bottom of it, there was this a sort of pit where they put all the waste over the hundreds of years. And we dug down and we discovered the oldest piece of Irish clothing that was dated. We knew it was how long it had been there because on the top of it, above it, on the layer above, was a 1603 coin. So we knew that what we found below was older than that. And one of the things, there was a part of a woman's dress which had been thrown away, but there was also a beanie. Not with such a big pom-pom as that, with a smaller one. And I thought, what were they doing in the 17th century wearing those? Now, of course, what they were doing was that when they fought, they had metal encased armor on their heads to stop people, cutting their heads. Now, they're very heavy. So what do? Underneath, you wear a beanie with a pom-pom. So if somebody hits you very hard with a big sword on the top of your metal hat, it will not hurt your skull because of the pom-pom. That's why you have it. Anyway, what was your question?
Appreciate that. Appreciate it. So, if you were a sports reporter, what current athlete would you?
If I was a sports supporter.
A sports reporter.
A sports reporter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which current athlete would you interview, and would you make a movie out of it, just like with Jesse Owens?
Which athletes would I talk? Well, I think I'd talk to the tennis players, because I'm not sure there's a movie to be made about tennis, but I play a little tennis, or I used to. I still play a bit. I'm amazed by what you have to put in your head to be a winner. You have to have great technique. You have to have great physique. But it's that extra little thing, which we talk about in race, that turns a good athlete into a winning athlete. And it's attitude. Because I think that attitude is useful in every form of life, which is why I think kids always at school should do sports. The attitude of, I'm going to win. Now, you may not win, you may come third. But nevertheless, without that attitude, you wouldn't have come third. And it's the desire to succeed in what you are doing. And that, I think, is brought to the most concentrated form through tennis. Because what are you doing? You're knocking a ball back and forward, over a net, backward and forward. And you get tired, you get bored, you get frustrated, you get angry, but you have to hang on to that extra thing. And you look at some of those tennis players and you think, how do they do that? How do they do that for 4 hours, play, and still they will not give up. They will not give up. It's a fantastic quality, and I'd love to make a film about, I don't know, you couldn't make a film about that, but if I was a sports reporter, that's who I'd talk to. I'd say, where does that come from, that desire to win?
Well, this has been a terrific back and forth today. Ladies and gentlemen, the film is Race. It opens nationwide February 19th. Please thank Jeremy Irons. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks very much.